Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. You'll have to forgive my voice. I've had a cold, so it's kind of hard for me to pronounce words, and I'm not very good at that anyway, so you'll have to overlook that. We want to make a quick video talking about the differences between compensators on pistols and ports on pistols. And I want to say first that my experience with compensators and ports, I would say compensators, I've shot over 10 pistols that are compensated, many different platforms, and also probably over 20 ported guns, many different platforms as well. So I want to give kind of a different opinion. We've talked about this in the past some. We've compared different ported pistols. We've compared different comped pistols. We've compared comps with ports in one way or another, but I think this is a little bit different than what I've talked about in the past. And one of the things I want to talk about is, like with this Viper, I used to really favor the compensated pistols. I thought that was the best. You know, the XC, staccato, those are the way to go. I mean, that's the ultimate gun, and it is it's one of the best guns you can shoot, probably, that you could fit in a competition box, you know, full-size gun. You know, the staccato XC is probably one of the best, one of the softest, one of the flattest shooting guns. However, as I've shot comps a lot and shot ports a lot, I do tend to favor the ports more in some ways, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Now, before we get started, I will say that, you know, I have small to medium hands, and you notice a lot of times people will go and you'll watch a lot of these videos on stuff like this, on how flat a gun shoots, on grip and technique, and you see a lot of these guys, and a lot of these guys that do these videos have massive hands, and they can shoot any gun, and then they want to say how everybody's got a bad grip, and it's like, well, we just can't grip, you know, the gun and put as much, we don't have as much square inches in our grip in our hand to do what you're doing. And, you know, a lot of them like to brag and talk about stuff like that because it comes so easy for them, but me, along with some of my friends that actually have smaller hands too, you know, we do have to struggle with keeping a gun flat a little bit more than some other people would. And I like to think I have fairly strong hands, but they are smaller than average, I would say, a little bit slightly smaller. So, getting into that, I want to talk about kind of what I noticed on most compensated guns, and I guess we'll just get into kind of the negative of that because it's one of the main things I want to bring out. So what I've noticed about compensated guns is, because all the gases and pressures through most of your barrel space is allowed to build up as the bullet comes through here, the energy is building up and coming back into the back of the hand. I do feel like on most compensated guns, unless they're pretty heavy, you do feel more energy in the back of the hand with a compensated gun. Into the palm of the hand right here. And although most compensated guns shoot fairly flat, I also notice you get this, I'm trying to think of the right word for it, you get this fast shock. Let's just say a shock. I don't like using some of the other words. You get this shock into the back of the hand, and you get this quick up, so the gun goes up really fast, it comes down really fast. So that's what I've noticed about compensated guns, and all that they shoot really flat. When you watch them, you know, you can't even see they're going up. They're going up and down so fast. I mean, just up and down. But you feel the gun go up and down. And that is something that, you know, some people may not like. And when you've shot several ported guns, you know, that are designed a certain way, you know, you kind of start to favor the way the ports feel, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Now, exceptions to that, like here's some compensated guns. Here's the barrel compensated P226 X5. Here is the Viper we just showed you. And I also want to show you, I've got other guns as well, but I'm just going to show you these three. Here's a Bull Viper. Now, the reason why this one is kind of excluded from that feeling is because, one, you've got this massive frame here that's super heavy, and then you've got 3 comps, so by the time the pressure starts to build up, there's so much space that the gases are hitting here that it kind of mitigates that shock into the back of the hand, and so much weight on this frame that you don't get that same sensation. So I'd say for this gun it's kind of different. and you don't get that same shock into the hand. It's a very soft shooting gun, but it is an open gun. It's super large, and it's heavy. Everything's heavy on this gun besides the grip. The grip's lightweight, but everything else on this gun is heavy. It's literally called the heavy metal for a reason. I mean, it's a chunk of steel. But yeah, this gun is kind of an exception because of the amount of compensation it's getting and the sheer weight of the gun. You know, it makes for a super soft shooting experience. But like I said, when you're shooting a Bull Viper like this, you do get kind of that sudden jarring feeling. And although it shoots super flat and it looks good on video, when you're shooting it, you got to be careful not to let your I guess not to get in your mind a little bit and allow that to cause you to want to flinch, because it is kind of a sharp feeling. And in some ways, because the compensator is pushing down, it's actually directing more of that energy into your hand, because it's not letting the gun do like this. Guns that have a lot of muzzle flip actually feel softer in the back of your hand. And once you get used to that, you know, it kind of can be a little jarring for you mentally to get used to a gun like this that wants to stay flat, because it's pushing the energy back into the back of your hand. A friend of mine is wanting an Alien from Czechoslovakia, those guns that are super flat shooting, striker fired. You know, the bore axis is super low. He's wanting one of those, but I'm a little bit nervous that if I got one of those, the fact that the energy is so much directed in the back of the hand, it would still kind of play tricks on me mentally, because I wouldn't like that shock that comes right back into the hand. And that's something to consider on stuff like that. Really low bore axis guns, if you're used to those guns that want to flip up a lot, they're going to feel softer in your hand, even though that you're going to have to wait a lot longer for the gun to stabilize to get it take a second shot. They can actually feel softer to some shooters. So yeah, you get on this lightweight compensated gun, you get a lot of kind of a jarring sensation, a strong sensation into the hand. Although it shoots super flat and you can double tap really fast, you have to mentally get past that, because recoil and anticipation, we all have it. No matter how good you are, you have it. And a gun that just you haven't kind of adjusted to and you haven't mentally got used to, it can cause you to want to anticipate that jolting feeling that these compensators can give you. And a lot of people just think, I guess this is one thing this video is for, a lot of people think that you put a compensator like this on a gun and it's just going to shoot like super soft and super flat, and it's just not the case. It will shoot way flatter, but that energy is just redirected somewhat into the hand. So it's based off the weight, how big the compensator is, how long the barrel is, what the frame's made out of, you know, what kind of gun it is. You know, there's thousands of factors, but that's one of the negatives about compensators I don't think are mentioned very often. Like I said, on a Staccato XC or one of these guns, you know, it's a little bit less because they're heavier and bigger guns, right? So that does help a lot. However, let's talk about ported guns a little bit. Ported guns, I think you get kind of the same issue that we're just talking about if the gun is ported way out here on the end of the barrel. Okay, guys? So if the gun is ported too far forward, you get kind of that same feeling I'm talking about where it jolts into the hand. So it's nice when you can put the ports, you can start the ports early and end the ports late. I feel like that really does help, but it don't have to be every time. It depends on how large the ports are, if it's a V port, if it's a top port, you know, how heavy the gun is. You know, it's all about the proper tuning and the proper placement of the ports, and it's going to make a big difference based off all those factors. But I do feel like for the most part, if you start the ports fairly early, but not too early, you don't want to start them, you want to give the barrel about an inch to build pressure and velocity behind the bullet before it hits the port. You don't want to lose too much velocity with the ports. And it's all based off the size of the ports, like I said, and the design of the ports and the design of the gun. But these ports work really good. I do really like, I have to say, I really like the way these work. You know, you see how This first port is pretty close to the chamber, but enough room to start building pressure and velocity, and it's just the right size. In this gun, it just feels soft, like the gun just feels like as it starts to build pressure in your hand, it starts losing pressure up here, and it starts softening the recoil, and all the way through the barrel, it's slowly softening that recoil and pushing the barrel back down slowly and softly. You don't get that jarring up and down that you get with the Bull Viper. You just get a really soft kind of up and down rhythm that's really comfortable to shoot. And this gun being heavier and having this design this way, and we kind of picked this design. This was actually designed by us. Worked out really well. Me and a buddy he had some ideas and I kind of had some ideas, and I wanted something simple, not too complicated, but I also wanted to look good, and this actually worked really good. You can see how that looks. Those circles fit right within those designs there on the Kimber, and they turned out really well. The ports are just the right size to not lose too much gas, but also be very effective. And if you put too many ports, if you put too many ports on a barrel, it's hitting a work right. If you put too little, based off where you put them, it just makes the biggest difference. But I feel like porting, when done properly, gives you the softest amount of recoil in the hand versus muzzle flip mitigation balance. I just think ported guns like this will do the best if you want both. If you want just flat, a big huge compensator works great. But if you want both, I think that porting is like this is the way to go. And that's kind of my main thought for today. I'll show you some more. So like this, you can see how this is ported right in the middle of this 4-inch barrel. You've got ports right in the middle, so it starts pretty early. It also ends pretty early. And these are about the right size, because you definitely don't want them too big. You don't want the ports too big. You don't want them to start too far back. You don't want them to, I guess, to be too many ports. You don't want them to be too many, because you have to have enough energy to run the slide. You can tune the spring, the recoil spring, but you can't tune it so far, because you tune it so far back or so far light, and the gun will not have enough energy to push the round back into the chamber and be reliable. So you want to find what's the lightest recoil spring that can push that bullet into the chamber, and then you want to port your gun to work well with that spring. So that's kind of the way it's actually better if you look at it that way. A lot of people think, well, I'm just going to port it how I want and then figure out what to do. No, if you think, well, what's the lightest spring that'll work in this gun, and you port it based off kind of what you can get that energy down to where it work with best with that spring, that's kind of the optimal way of doing it. Because a lot of people, they're like, oh, I got my gun ported and it works fine with the factory recoil spring. Well, my thoughts on that are, if it works fine with the factory recoil spring, that's not a bad thing, but that also means that you can port that gun more, because if it works fine with the factory recoil spring, and the factory recoil spring was meant to mitigate the energy from a non-ported barrel, then you're not going to lose enough. You're not losing enough energy by porting it into the hand to feel a huge difference. Whereas if you port a gun and you have to change the factory recoil spring because it's not cycling, that actually means the ports are actually doing what you want them to do, because they're actually going to make the gun feel flatter and feel like there's less energy in the hand. And most of my guns that I've had done, I've had to tune them because they probably wouldn't work with the factory spring. So that actually means that they have made a major difference in what you're going to feel when you shoot the guns, both in flatness and softness. So just another way of looking at it, guys. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit sick. I've been stumbling with my words a little bit today, but I wanted to give you some content, and that's some thoughts I had. So many different things. I do favor the ports, like I said, but I still like compensated guns. I like it when you can port at something and compensate it. I think that's the best combination, because you get the best of both worlds. But then it could be a little bit of a pain to tune those type of guns. But still, I think the more you do to a gun like that, it's just the cooler it becomes and the more unique it becomes. But God bless. Have a great day. Please like and subscribe. Please leave a comment. Please leave or share the video with other people. And please subscribe if you have not. Let me know if you have any questions below. And I hope this gives you kind of a better idea of the differences between ports and the differences between comps. And yeah, I'm going to share different thoughts on this subject through the years as we learn more, and just kind of give you some perspective. You see all kinds of videos with the charts where people are shooting, and I like that. I like real good data, but not many people talk about, you know, how it feels. The chart doesn't tell you how the gun feels. The chart only tells you what you see. It shows you what you see visually. It can give you a visual representation of what it looks like when you're shooting and the gun's recoiling, but you have no idea. Just because a gun looks way flatter on a chart doesn't mean that it's going to feel more enjoyable when you shoot it. And that's something I was wanting to talk about in this video and give you, because that energy in the hand, that feeling when you're shooting a gun, it's completely different than just how flat a gun is. So that's what we want to talk about. God bless. Have a great day. Leave comments below.